Okay, let's pick up from where we left off earlier then in terms of EFOS iPad app for our training management system. Again, apologies for the technical issues on my iPad earlier, not sure what the issue was there, but let's get through so that we can finish off your understanding of the system. So effectively, having logged in, this is the first screen that you see. Again, from a consistency point of view, the first items that grab your attention are the task management areas to the right-hand side of the screen. Once again, following the same pattern as what we saw earlier within EFOS Web. The reality is here, so you would potentially not see training library or reports if not using those modules, which means your focus is firmly on the exams and training form aspects. And as you can see there, we've got 21 items in the training forms. Hopefully you would never see that, but clearly we have a red indicator, which means that needs our attention straight away there. This also carries on across the bottom of the screen where you see the navigation icons from home through to ultimately exams. So again, you can see we've got 2 items within training and 2 items within exams. Exams, that's for me as a pilot, that's my own personal training. So I know that I've got 2 exams that are ready for my completion. Training, if we select that icon, you can see it breaks up as my training and trainer. Again, just to reiterate what we said earlier, EFOS is a user license-based system. It's paid on a per user per month basis. But there is a lot of hidden value within the way that we work there. And as much as you may well have 2 or 3 different role profiles, or 2 or 3 different roles within your profiles rather, these being trainer, for example, admin, and also pilot, you do not pay for 3 different licenses. They are all wrapped up in one. So a lot of additional value there, as I say. This means you also need one login. And that's why when I do log in, I can see both my training and the aspects that need my attention from a trainer's perspective. If we quickly look at my training across the top, you see we have forms in progress, courses, expiry dates, and certification. The certification generated every time we successfully complete a training session. That means I've got full access of that within my iPad or within the EFOS mobile. Once we select those items, it brings not only the syllabus that's been completed, but also the grading. In this instance, the example is just a feedback form, but this would be as detailed if you were looking at the actual form completions or the certificate completions, as we saw earlier in PDF format. Again, any expiry dates would automatically be generating alerts. So as any of the qualifications get to within 3 months, as an example of expiring, you will be getting notifications in your admin dashboards. I will be getting notifications within both my EFOS and via email. So we can all see that something is impending and I'm expecting to take that training. I can start preparing for it. If we now take a look at the trainer section, so as an application, unsurprisingly, we have a continuous development program. EFOS is an iOS native application. It's not a reskinned version of the website, which means it's built to do exactly what it does in a very, very mercenary fashion. All of the usability, all of the functionality within is being pared back on an almost development by development basis. We're taking out workflow aspects and unnecessary steps for navigation to make it as clear and concise as possible for users to work through from start to finish. Equally, we're in a position whereby with it being a native application, it works just as effectively within offline mode as it does within online mode. You only need to be online to download the content in the first place, or push data back from the app post completion. Once everything is downloaded, it works seamlessly in offline mode, and then the handshake back to online mode is incredibly effective and very, very consistent, unlike some products out there where you can lose data when it reconnects. So some of the biggest changes that have recently been released as part of our V16 launch, which is the version that we're looking at now. Some of those are visual changes, just to bring it more in line with Apple best practice, iOS best practice. Again, improvements on usability and workflow reductions. Other aspects are more significant, and it's seen the introduction of our next generation EFOS forms, which are linked to functionality that directly impacts on the app itself. Some of which we'll come on to in just a second. So starting off from left to right across the very top there, we've got the top level navigation, which gives us access to some of the side-by-side form filling, as well as group forms, etc., which we'll take a look at. Next layer down helps us to toggle between forms and courses, depending on what we need to complete. And all of which gives us direct access to both your trainees, your pilots, for example, and the content that they need. We start with training forms. So the first thing you'll notice that when we select the icon in the top right, that gives us the ability to search on the pilots who are in the system. If you are a pilot trainer, you will only ever see pilots within this section. You won't see everything like I can here. And equally, you will only see the pilots that you have the capability to ultimately train, ideally. You shouldn't see absolutely everything. If we search for a candidate, so in this instance, we'll take Demo Pilot 6, it instantly gives us all of the training forms that are of relevance to that particular pilot. We select line check, we choose today's date, create the form, and the form is now ready for use. Okay. Down the left-hand side are all the syllabus items, and then the main panel gives you access to all of the different elements that you need to ultimately fill out, starting off with the actual sector-based information there and the overview with the data that you need to fill it. We just look at the actual grading aspect. So there is nothing that we can't cater for when it comes to EFOS from a grading perspective. It works perfectly across traditional ATQP, AQP, EBT, and competency-based training. The reality of it is you tell us what you need and we look at building it in this format, and we then look at all of the elements that make it smarter. So for instance, if we select company standard achieved, that's one selection, it's one click, we move on. If we select only after rebriefing, we have to enter a comment that justifies what we witnessed or what we didn't witness, that justified the need for the additional comment. Or sorry, justified the need for that particular grading. It's the same within our EBT forms. When you fill out the competency-based or evidence-based forms, if you're talking about a company standard grading, that's a single selection. You don't have to add anything else. EFOS automatically captures the additional data in the background. If it's above or below that company standard, on the other hand, you have to select the performance indicators or competencies that it relates to and give a reason via the comment there. All of which then helps to generate more data whilst keeping the form filling to a bare minimum for the trainers. Again, lots and lots of different options here as the starting point that can then be tailored if required. Now, as you can see down the left, the items that are ultimately yellow are yet to be started. So as soon as we end up in a position where we complete each section and we move through, these ultimately turn to green, and it gives us a very easy indicator that shows exactly where we are on the forms. Not such an issue with a small form, but with a really, really long form, can be hard to stay on track in terms of where you are, although not with EFOS in this instance. So ultimately, we fill out each and every section, and then the final stage is the sign-off process. In our demo versions, our trial versions, this is a scribble pad function. In our main systems that we build, the majority of our customers use they use their PIN or their personal identification as the basis there for obvious reasons. But again, lots of options available there. I mentioned earlier about the pairing. So if we use the icon in the top left, that automatically identifies the two pilots who are on the proficiency check groups them together. If we select both of those, we can open the form in side-by-side mode. We can also compress the sidebar to give us more room to ultimately review what we need to review. And we can focus in on one pilot in particular. We don't have to retain both within that section. Again, one of our newest functions. Lots of feedback from our customers to say that this will be a huge benefit. Lots of feedback now they're trying it to say that it is indeed a major time saving. Yes, for any items that are not crew member specific, you can copy information from left to right rather than having to double key it. But all of the grading aspects are ultimately bespoke and specific to each pilot, so you can't copy those across. Again, as you see, very, very easy to fill out, very clear in terms of what's going on. If we skip forward on this and we go to the evaluation phase, really, really good example of evidence-based training and how this works. So if we select adequate, no problem, single selection, single click. If we select acceptable, it's now asking us for additional information. So performance indicators, and ultimately a comment to go along with that and justify exactly why we've selected it, all of which can then be evaluated in more detail via performance analytics there. Okay. I mentioned earlier during the call about the way in which the forms can also be configured or updated to create an almost adaptive learning scenario during a sim session, for instance. To do that, we just select the cog menu, add or remove sections. It reopens the form, and for any non-mandatory items, we can actually add more or delete so that our training session is maximized. We focus on what we need to. So that's typical training form view. Again, quite high level, but the main takeaways there are ease of use, very, very clear and concise, and ultimately, massively configurable when it comes to the way in which we present that information to you there. If we go into courses, so if you think this is based on courses being pre-selected or rather pre-scheduled within the EFOS web, and having your training or having your pilots already allocated to those courses, which in turn means all I need to do from a trainer's perspective is log into here. This is the worst case scenario. Log into here, select the pilot that I'm looking for. In this instance, we'll go demo pilot 4. No courses available for those because I should have selected demo pilot 3, which ultimately means we've now got access to that training course. So OCC course, again, down the left-hand side, all of the elements that you need. In this instance, from simulator training down is everything that we would take via the iPad. Again, we select, we create, again, fully configurable. So in this section, we're only going to do session 1. We'll exclude the remaining sessions. We select, we choose today's date, and that form is now ready to be populated and filled in as we go along. Again, you can see the syllabus items down the left and everything we need as we scroll from top to bottom. It is continuous scroll nowadays. You don't have to use the navigation bar down the left to select the exited sessions in the form. And as you can see, with it being the iPad at the bottom there, we've got the ability to take images as well for additional information there. So very, very efficient. Now, the difference between this and a single training form, because this is part of course management, whenever we complete that section, as soon as it's signed, submitted, and accepted, the reality of it is it instantly updates your training records for you in the background. Okay. So you don't have to go in and update anything manually. EFOS is doing this, and it's also resetting things like expiry dates, and it's also generating the certification there as well. You notice we've also got requirements, events, and comments. This gives you the ability to see exactly what's required from a trainer's perspective, any events that are associated with that particular course, and any comments. So if there's any comments, if you're taking day 2, for instance, you can review the comments on day 1 very, very easily. and get a better idea of what you're picking up there from a candidate perspective. So that's the output for course management, which we looked at earlier on. Again, big changes in terms of workflows, streamlining what your trainers need to do to ultimately complete the form there, and the ability to do that side by side is hugely valuable. The only other aspect I wanted to cover off very quickly, if we just go back to forms for a second, was the group form category. So again, this has previously been available from an EFOS web perspective. And it quite simply, it's a better way of managing classroom training scenarios where you've got multiple candidates all attending a classroom or ground training session at the same time there. Now, the premise is quite simple because these sessions form part of the actual syllabus. As soon as you create the course, the classroom training, the group forms are ultimately pre-prepared in the background. As you see here, we've selected one of those forms. Let's just cancel and do that again. We've selected dangerous goods. It's automatically opened the form and produced the candidates who should be in that training session, which means all we need to do is mark it as complete or incomplete. We then add any comments that we need and select that we're submitting it as ourselves. Close, that's ultimately submitted at that point. So the reality of it is, from there, it doesn't matter if you've got 1 or 20 candidates, all of their records will now be automatically updated as soon as that form is submitted, which in turn puts you in a position whereby you are not double keying information. You're not having to update lots of records manually, and it also updates the training progress indicator within course management as well. So that's a very, very quick overview of what EFOS looks like from an iPad perspective. Again, more than happy to jump on further calls and take you through these bits as a wider group when your management team want to take a look. But in the meantime, please don't hesitate if you have any questions. Thank you.